Welcome to another episode of the Business Everyday Show. I'm your host, Jonathan Wilms, and today in the studio, I am tremendously excited that we have a gentleman that has started a company with some friends of his and have grown it into something amazing, and I am really excited to see where this conversation goes. So, person in the seat in front of me, who are you? Bob, who are you? What have you done? You are the founder, one of the co-founders of this incredible company. And who are you and where do you come from?
Well, I'm Bob Landecker. I originally came from Beaver Falls, New York. Now reside in Clarksville, Tennessee. And yes, I'm the one of the founding members for Grand Slam Safety LLC. We're based in Krogan, New York, but we do work
in New York.
Yeah, we do work nationwide.
That is awesome. Now, Grand Slam Safety was founded in, I believe, it's end of 2008. Can you give me a little snippet of, first, what you do with Grand Slam Safety, but then, how'd you get started in this industry? Because, little foreshadowing, it's in the athletic space and has expanded way beyond that. Maybe we can get into some of the fun details, that insider information that we talked about the other night at dinner. But you have entered an industry that I don't think that you went to school for, that you didn't have inspiration at 15 years old to start. Tell me, Bob,
Yeah.
where did you begin and how did Grand Slam Safety form?
Well, in the beginning, the whole thing started. Currently, let's talk about what we do right now. Right now, we actually provide what we call, general terms refer to, we do athletic court and athletic field containment systems.
Okay.
With composed of both netting and mesh systems.
Okay.
And they are to provide safety to the athlete.
Yep.
And also protect the spectators.
Okay.
So that's a broad area, and that goes anywhere from outfield fencing systems for ball diamonds outdoors to indoor gym divider curtains, indoor turf field perimeter fencing systems, batting cages. So there's a lot we do, and I can expand on that as we go through the show. But that's what we do now.
Yeah.
It wasn't always like that in the beginning.
Okay, let's
go back to the beginning. In a small gym far away.
Oh dear, we're going that far back.
Obviously, I'm just kidding. But no, back in 2008, in February of 2008, I was at a high school basketball game at my high school back in Beaver Falls, New York.
Okay.
And the president of the Booster Club approached me at one of the games and said, Bob, we're thinking about putting up an outfield fence for the baseball team.
Okay.
Because at that time, just a caveat, at that time, our school didn't have an outfield fence for the baseball team. So you had to hit the ball as hard as you could and run as fast as you could.
I've played on one of those fields.
And ground balls that got through the infield and split the outfield could be home runs.
Yep, in-park
and
home
deep,
runs.
Deep, high fly balls could be an out.
Yeah.
Depending on who was playing. So in the end, they said, no, we want to do an outfield fence for the baseball field. And in the discussion, she asked me that, the fact that the Booster Club will consider it, but they needed help from community on coming up with ideas as to what it should look like.
Okay.
And the reason she asked me is because, again, small school. So she knew that my son, who played baseball, was, in fact, he was going up that year. He was a sophomore. He was going up to varsity to play baseball that year. Left field for him. And in the process, they figured, we really got to do something. We've got to try to get an outfield. So
yeah,
I worked with them. I told her, I said, I'd be glad to help you. But my concern is it has to be safe.
Right.
I'd seen a lot of outfield fencing options at different schools that I didn't think were that safe. And I've never been a fan of a chain link fence as an outfield fence.
Lots of injury. Yeah.
Yeah. I had friends that I met at the time, and even subsequent to that, and over the years, I've ran into people who actually have knee injuries, having done the same thing, having ran into the
I played baseball at Cooperstown Dream Park in New York, and those, when we played nationals, those There were players many days that would walk away with arm, shoulder, leg,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
full on sprint run into an outfield fence and
Yeah.
tear them up.
Yeah, and that was my concern. Chain link is a very good barrier fence,
Mm-hmm.
reasonable cost, and very durable.
Mm-hmm.
Not the best fence for stopping a full speed athlete.
Not if you want to leave them
Yeah,
intact.
they don't get along that well. So I told the Booster Club president that I'd be glad to help.
Yep.
That I would let her know I'd research some options that I could find that were safe. And so I did that. I spent about a month or so just looking for stuff that I felt would be safe. And the Lord had given me a picture of it in my mind that I was looking for.
Okay.
I had a sense and understood again from what the Lord had given me that what it would have to be constructed and look like. Couldn't find anything on the internet. Again,
Right.
assumption, even this is back in 2008. The assumption was if you can't find it on the internet, it doesn't exist
Yep.
commercially.
Right.
Speaking.
Well, absolutely.
So when I couldn't find anything like it, I thought, well, this is interesting. So I had an idea what it should look like. So I spent probably 2 months after that on when I could, because again, I'm working full time at that time in another career, and I couldn't find anything on the United States Patent and Trademark website
Okay.
that fit anything that I could think of. And I went through all their search and I used all the different terms and I did everything they needed to.
I was gonna say this
Nothing
week
popped up.
I went to the trademark and patents websites and I started doing some searches myself. That is not an easy website to
No,
navigate.
well, it's a U.S. computer-based system,
Yeah.
and it's ancient.
It's
So it's
historic.
I'm sure they tried to update it, but it's not updated the
You
best.
can't
So
search by like picture or term. You have
yeah.
to do you have to be pretty precise to find what you're looking
Oh
for.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
and for you to just spend a few
Yeah.
months.
Well, it did. I took my time because the reason I kept taking longer because after the first two or couple of weeks, I'm thinking this is kind of odd. I can't find anything,
Hmm.
and so it was actually starting to pique my interest a little bit more.
Okay.
And I wanted to convince myself that I had a legitimate opportunity for something that's unique. So
Yeah.
that's why I really took the time. In the end, 2 months later, I realized, now wait a minute, there is something here. So what I did is I built a little 4 foot wide by 4 foot square miniature
Okay.
ball field and built a miniature's fence on
I
it,
gotcha.
just like I had envisioned. And
And that was the birth of your idea.
yeah, and it worked good because I could roll a golf ball against it and it'd bounce off. So the model worked just
Does this
like
model still exist?
it does.
At the
It's going to
home-
be part of the history of the company.
Is it in the
I
home
hope.
office?
Well,
still?
hopefully someday it'll make it into the Baseball Hall of Fame, but I don't in Cooperstown. But I don't think they're ready for it yet. They don't even probably care about it. But the
They will.
yeah. So I did. I built a model, and what I did is I shared that with my best friend Bob Chamberlain, who's the first partner to come into the business.
Okay. Partner number one.
Partner number one. Also shared it with a couple of friends of mine that were engineers, who could look at it from an engineering standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, both good friends, and they said, "Bob, yeah, you tighten these cables, this, and you have this like this." And they looked at it and told me different things. I said, "Yeah, this will work. There's no reason it shouldn't."
Yeah. The math checks out.
So from their minds, they felt it was worth it. So I talked to Bob about it, and then he had a friend of his, Mickey, which I knew, Mickey Lehman. He came in as the third partner.
Partner number three.
And then the fourth person that came in was Dave Moore, a friend of mine who I'd had. He and his wife and Deborah and I had become really good friends.
Yeah.
And because our sons played sports all the way right up through school. And so Dave was very interested in this because he looked at it and felt, yeah, this makes sense. So they'd seen the model,
Mm-hmm.
talked with them and said, and my thing was talking to them about the idea. I said, I shared with them about couldn't find it on the internet,
Yep.
couldn't find it on the United States Patent and Trademark
Patent
website.
trades, yep.
I said, I think there's a business here. I was thinking that this is something that, if we could do it, I think it'll work. And I said, I'm thinking if we come to the school,
Mm-hmm.
offer them this system for free, but explain that this is a prototype.
Mm-hmm.
and it will be modified and changed over time, but we'll give you a free fence.
Right. We just need a place to play and figure
Right.
this thing out.
And so they all agreed and said, let's give it a shot. Let's see what they say first before we make a final decision.
Sure.
So that was in 2008. We started working on the concept and did my model and stuff. In the fall of 2008 is when we took it to the Booster Club, and they looked at it and said, okay. It was not until the next spring that we actually got finally to the school board and
Okay.
made the offer.
Right.
And in fact, the school board said, go for it. The
That's
school board just had
awesome.
one requirement, is that we connect with the school's insurance company.
Okay.
So we connected with the school company, and
Yeah,
that
schools
particular
and
company,
liability. Whew.
Erie Lake Community or whatever it's called, I can't remember anymore for sure, but they basically had one requirement in this design that they had to see to help protect somebody from getting a hand caught in a cable.
Mm-hmm.
And that was nice because that insurance company basically insured, I think, like 2/3 of the schools in New York. So that was
Wow.
really big.
That was a huge, like,
So
that's your
that
in.
was kind of one of those things where the Lord provided yet that one thing that needed to happen that we didn't thought about.
Yeah.
So that was good. So we ended up in the end putting up, getting permission, and we built the system in the summer of 2009. We started working on it then,
Okay.
and playing with prototypes and design and stuff. Formed a company in 2009. We actually were incorporated in October of 2009.
Okay. So from
In
I
November, actually. I'm sorry.
so from idea to incorporation was right at a year, but you were already implementing the idea
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
6, 8 months in.
Right, and we applied for a patent then also in October of 2009.
Have you ever applied for a patent before?
No, but I don't have the book anymore, but it's kind of like one of these patents for dummies type of books. And
Okay.
I literally learned how to do a patent, and wrote the framework of the first patent.
Yeah.
And then we got to a point where we contacted a firm out of Syracuse, New York. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, we connected with one of the professors at Syracuse University who in fact writes patents.
Gotcha. Yeah, that language has to be so like
Yeah.
precise
So
and
Harold, yeah, your arguments and all that kind of stuff have to be just perfect.
yeah.
And so Harold Burson out of Syracuse was able to help us with that and help us
Wow.
make the first filing.
Okay.
So yeah, that got started.
Did you get granted your patent the first filing, or did you have to re-modify and adjust every
Well,
time? Are you a one for one guy?
we did get we did yeah, the first patent application did finally get I'll just call it approved rather than
Sure.
trying to get it all into all the patent language. But there's prosecutions and all this kind of stuff going on. So, but in the end, it did. It took us 3.5 years to get
Golly.
the first patent and $35,000
Whew,
just to get the patent.
whew.
So and that was 2008, 9, 10, 11 monies.
Mm-hmm.
10, 11, 12 monies.
It's like
So
$3 million today.
yeah. I wouldn't want to think about that. So in fact, I can show you here on the monitor here. We just got another patent here recently. Kind of neat.
That's
So in the
awesome.
end, we got started, worked on the patent.
Yep.
We had submitted the first patent, and the first patent was based on an outfield fence that's in an arc.
Okay.
And then we had opportunity during that application process that we had someone. I was at a ball game in Beaver River,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, in Kroger, New York, at a softball game.
All right.
And I had taken and this is another thing where the Lord clearly provided the opportunity because I had taken our U-Haul truck up there
Mm-hmm.
because my sister and brother-in-law ran the concession stand that summer at the park and
Oh,
needed
yeah,
extra
yeah.
storage, extra refrigerator storage space so they could serve more food because
Yep.
they have a big 4th of July tournament, softball tournament in the area.
Big
And
margins. Come on, concessions.
literally brings in teams from all over, including Canada.
That's
It's
awesome.
a huge tournament. So I had our truck parked there, our delivery truck parked there with banners and with logos and banners on it.
For Grand Slam safety.
Yes.
Okay.
And while we were there, somebody asked about it, so I answered them. It happened to be a guy named Brian who he and his uncle were building a large indoor facility in Whitesboro, New York. It's going to have turf field. So we got talking, and he said, "Hey, with this fence, can you make that straight so we can do it indoors?" I said, "Oh yeah, I think we can."
Mm-hmm.
So sure enough, we looked at it and played around with it. Sure enough, yeah, we could. Just a matter of having to do a slight redesign, so we didn't need the architect's attention to system.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the second application. We actually filed that at the
Whoa.
same time as a continuation, so we ended up with patent numbers, but on the same application.
Right.
So that's what actually what broke the ice and got us indoors. So prior to that, we're just doing outfield fence. That's
Sure. And this
now
was
all of
in
a sudden,
2009 as well, or is this a couple years down the road?
this is several years down the road.
Okay.
This is probably 2014, 15 that we actually then took it and moved it indoors to
Okay.
an indoor facility.
So for a few years there, it was like, oh no, this is an
Right.
outdoor field
Right.
system. This is
Right.
for your
Right.
baseball, your softball, all those types
Yeah.
of things. And then you're like, wait a minute, there's a
Right.
request to modify to bring
Correct.
indoors, and you're like, yeah, we can do that.
And once we did that and put it in,
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden for us, it opened up our eyes to other opportunities.
Right.
And as we went along, and as we continued to add systems and different products, it just continued to expand. At that time, that did take us now indoors.
Right.
Well, that indoor exposed us to the whole idea of divider curtains, indoor batting cages,
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff that we hadn't thought about. But now it became kind of a natural expansion
Right.
product. And so over time, really the demand to the demand in regard to meeting a project's expectations as to what equipment's going to be supplied by a particular vendor,
Mm-hmm.
the more that we could expand, the more opportunity we had to actually getting bids.
Absolutely.
Because most general contractors, we almost are always a subcontractor
Yeah.
to a general contractor.
Makes sense.
Back at the time, we were doing just like we just do an outfield at a new ball diamond.
Mm-hmm.
Now we are part of doing containment systems for courts and fields at a project,
Right.
but it's for an entire and huge athletic complex that
Yep.
may contain multiple fields and multiple buildings.
Different applications
So
within the same facility.
we're able to do all of that containment stuff now. We just recently got a project for Muhlenberg State University in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
and it's our first contract that's over $1 million, just our part of it alone.
That's
So some of these
cool.
some of these facilities it's just unbelievable what people are spending putting money into
gosh.
athletic facilities today. But getting back to that time of 2010, 11, 12, as we came up through that time, that was when we were still really in research and design,
Right.
almost exclusively.
Like, what do
Most
we
of
have
everything we
here?
did was research and design back then, because we're
Yeah.
still developing and designing and making modifications and improvements, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And we're expanding from outfield fencing in the outdoor area. We're expanding to batting cages,
Mm-hmm.
baseline fencing, and the people will know if they follow baseball. In the last 15 to 20 years, even the last 10 has expanded significantly because of spectator safety.
Yep. Yep.
You've
Get those
seen
fly
MLB
balls and
fields
bats and
putting netting all the way down to the foul poles now, in
Mhm.
some cases, because of this whole issue of safety and the
Golly.
resulting litigation issues
Yep.
that have arisen.
Yeah, with 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, there's not really time for kids to react or people to react if you're not paying attention.
Not at all.
So, in the process, what's happened is we've just naturally expanded our product line, and then again, as I indicated with the Whitesboro project, moving indoors was a natural, and helped us get into other things as well. So over time,
Yeah.
we've continued to expand that, and to the point now where we actually are doing indoor turf. We don't manufacture indoor turf, but it becomes a natural
part of your
segue
package.
because it becomes part of the package.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what's happened. And then in 2014,
Mhm.
remember, looking back at the physical plant of our company, yeah, it was my basement. I did my initial sewing of prototypes, and my garage was the next big step up. Although
Basement
that
to
didn't work as well
garage.
in the wintertime because our cars had to be out in the snow. But in the process,
It is New York, yeah.
it is New York. It was New York, yeah. In the process, 2000, I think it's 2012, we were able to actually move into a barn of Bob Chamberlain's on Shady Ave in Krogan, where we actually had more space.
Gotcha.
That helped us, and that
So
helped us
four
a little
years
bit.
after like
Yeah,
idea,
yeah,
you were
yeah,
in a facility.
yeah. Makeshift as it was. But in 2014, we got to the point where we decided it was time to grow, even to be ready for more growth. So
Right.
2014, we actually purchased an abandoned paper plant in
Wow.
Krogan, New York,
Okay.
65,000 square feet, which gave us, at the time, we thought all the room we'd ever need.
It's like that idea
Funny
of
how
somebody coming
space
up
always
with like,
seems so big until you start working.
oh gosh, it's like that idea of those people who came up with like 4 megabytes
Yeah,
data cards, and you're just like, you'll never fill those things
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Yeah, turns out
It
2
turns
years
out,
later.
yeah, no, and that's true. But that's typical of space, right?
Yeah.
That's for any business. So in 2014, we moved to Bridge Street in Krogan, New York, which is where the factory is today.
Okay.
And we have consumed, Lord has allowed us to consume all that space,
Wow.
including a large wooden structure bus garage from the high school years ago that we've
Mhm.
literally just finished in the last year. Now rehabbing it, refurbishing it, and getting it all set up to be able to expand out there as well.
Yeah.
So again, so the physical plan is developed rather naturally as well. And
That's
now it's just
incredible.
a matter of improving equipment, improving
Mhm.
processes, improving procedures. I will say this though, and I think of this now, so it's kind of funny. So we actually, 2012, sold our first actual outfield fence
Okay.
to a local high school, and that was actually been in working. It's been actually in use since that time. We've done some fabric replacements since then, of course,
Gotcha.
because of the climate.
Yep.
But what's interesting about that system is that was in 2012.
Mhm.
We didn't hire our first engineer until 2014.
Wow.
So I always pick on our engineering department. Come on, guys, come on! The one we built without you guys is still working. How come this does work so well? So it is one of those funny things, but I just always kind of chuckle at that when I think about it. But no,
Absolutely.
we have grown, and the Lord has blessed us. We have we find that we're unique in the business because there's a lot of athletic equipment companies out there. You can just Google athletic equipment,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of equipment in regard to, basketball hoops and soccer goals and all that.
Right.
You can Google, athletic turf and find that. We're one of the unique companies that we have. First of all, we have proprietary
Mhm.
systems.
Yep.
We do manufacture other common equipment like vertical lift divider curtains, vertical lift batting cages, or
Yeah.
stationary batting cages, or divider curtains, and all that. But we're unique in that we design, we fabricate, and then we install.
Mhm.
And it's been an eye opener because just assume that everybody, there's companies all over doing it.
Just one-stop
Not so
shop.
much the case.
Yeah.
Um, and where we really started realizing that is just in the last couple of years. Uh, this year, just in the past 18 months, we've actually finished a couple of projects that of note.
Mhm.
I use them and I share with other people verbally about who we did work for.
Sure.
We can't use these names, any names, for marketing purposes.
Yeah.
But I can describe the fact that we have recently two product projects of note in regard to our design
Mhm.
and the quality of our design team. That we completed a vertical lift divider curtain in a research and training facility for a
Interesting.
Major League Baseball team, and that's research facilities in Tampa.
Okay.
So that it tells you who it is. But I haven't
We
used the
don't
name.
know, but audience
And,
figured
and,
out.
and we're okay with that. People are okay with that. We have to be careful of the mark,
Yeah.
the actual mark of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
particular team. Again, that's and the reason that they chose us because in fact their engineers, the facility they were building, could speak directly to the engineers building the product.
Mm.
That's huge. And so again, all this is a blessing because the Lord's
Right.
allowed us to put these things together. Not that we knew we had to go that route, but
Mhm.
as we continued to grow, in knowing that our proprietary products are going to require customization for pretty much every field and every application,
Yeah.
in a sense,
Special
we were never going
modification.
to be a company that was a commodity company.
Right.
We couldn't build, X hundred of these and have them sitting on a shelf and ship them when somebody
Right.
calls. It's just not the way it's going to work.
Everything you do is custom.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. In the other facility, we actually recently finished a vertical lift laser deflection system.
I have no idea what that even is, but
Well,
that sounds
it's
cool.
like a much bigger vertical lift batting cage,
Okay.
but it was specifically designed with material that captures and stops lasers from getting outside the actual area.
That's wild.
Because this company in California
Mm-hmm.
who sends people into space
Mm-hmm.
and rockets into space, and a lot of people have heard of their owner recently. um, they had an area. Their testing facility out in California had an area where they were concerned about lasers getting deflecting and reflecting or bounce whatever, and getting into areas outside of the testing area. So they wanted to be able to completely enclose the testing area because it was kind of in the middle area of a large open area.
I gotcha. They wanted to better utilize the space,
Yeah,
and they needed something to protect their people.
yeah, exactly. And so, in even when the people, my understanding is even when the people that are working in the machines when it's working, they're actually garbed in protective
Gosh.
and personal protective equipment.
Yeah.
So, but it was interesting because for us, our California salesperson one day calls us and said, "Hey, you guys, I got something interesting." Well, again, it's just one of those things where the Lord provided them to find our site
Yeah.
and realized, hey, that vertical lift batting cage is the mechanism we need
Mm-hmm.
here. And
Do you think that you could have had that conversation without the patent?
well, the patent itself doesn't address that specific product.
Okay,
The
I
patent
gotcha.
is only on the actual outfield fencing system and the
Gotcha.
tensioned straight line system for indoor use.
Okay, so it's just the system that you guys have developed that is
Right.
like, no, we need a special application that requires your system, but we need these materials, and then you had to
Correct.
go
So
from
we
there.
worked with them and
Yeah.
we built the system and we worked with them on applying their material to the system
Oh, what a cool thing to work
in
in
California.
partnership with another company to say,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
this is what we do really
Right.
well.
Yeah.
This is what you do really well.
Yeah.
Let's just do it together, and we both win.
Yeah. And again, when you look at both of these both of these companies are certainly world recognized, right? And so the big joke that went around was I've telling people in my when I'm trying to sell the company, I said, I said one of the things about it though is we were excited about this because we were pretty confident we were the only company in Kroger, New York, who
Mm-hmm.
had worked with both of these companies
Yeah,
in the last 18.
that's incredible.
Of course, if you know Kroger, New York, it's about 400.
So
So
do
it's
you
kind of a
employ
joke.
a percentage of that population at
Yeah,
this
yeah.
point? Now, before we get too far forward, and like I'm, all these are awesome things, but I want to ask a question about you yourself. Like, you have started this business, and you've talked engineering and construction, and even model making, and like all these different skills and abilities. Like, Bob, where do you come from? Have you been an engineer? Did you work as a manufacturer? Do you have a career or skill in consulting, or like where did you start to then have, I guess, the confidence to say, no, this is an idea and it could turn into a business? Like, even that thought for a lot
Hmm.
of people is a
Hmm.
big jump who are very corporate minded.
Hmm.
And so, like, do you come from corporate? Do you come from small business? Like, where do you come from to be able to then take this idea and now turn it into a really incredible business?
Yeah. Not even close. But no, seriously. Um,
Gotcha.
my background, I had spent 30 years in the nonprofit world. I
Okay.
had been either an executive director or a compliance officer and quality assurance director
Yeah.
for different multiple nonprofits over that span. Worked and
Wow.
served in for agencies that serve the developmentally disabled or
Okay.
mentally retarded,
Yep.
um, mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
substance abuse,
Okay.
abandoned children.
Wow.
I had that's where I'd worked. I had
Yeah.
worked in those areas, and so I came from the nonprofit.
Yeah. So legal and HR compliance, making sure that everybody's doing what they're
Yeah,
supposed to be
yeah.
doing and doing it
Well,
well.
especially with those, back then is when everything went into a lot of these transitioned in the 80s when I was in it, transitioned to being covered by
Mm. So when you go federal, you have
So,
so many more compliance
right.
issues.
So
Yeah.
the compliance requirements went sky high.
Okay.
So that's where it really became a lot of the nonprofits back then had to move towards a compliance officer that understood a lot of different things. And so
Right.
my college education and my graduate work is not in that at all either. I just happen to have a master's degree. The Lord blessed me with that to where I qualified to be those type of positions.
Yeah.
And I learned that as we went along because, in fact, the entire nonprofit industry was learning the whole
You
Medicaid.
were a part of the development of that
Correct.
industry, not
Correct.
just jumping in with a degree or
Yeah.
a skill set. Yeah.
And in New York State, all those different types of services are built into the Office of Mental Hygiene,
Okay.
which all the regulations were the same. It was they're being mirror images of each other. So what I
Mm-hmm.
did for one, I simply took to the other,
Right.
put it in their language, took to the other into their language, and ultimately the other in their language. So that's what I did for 30 years. In fact,
Wow.
I in Watertown, New York, three of those organizations were in Watertown, New York, and I went from one to the other and helped them set up all their compliance and quality assurance programs. And
Okay.
they all looked the same,
Gotcha.
but they're all compliant with their
30
particular regulations.
years in a career
Yeah.
of compliance and industry of 501(c)(3)s and all those things. And then n- not a 180 change. This is a different planet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
where did the confidence or the knowing come from? Just like where did your business acumen and sense come from? Was it had you run businesses or side hustles or things like that? Are you a book reader or like who
Yeah.
are you, Bob? You're a
Yeah.
mystery to me.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, there was mixed in there other entrepreneurial type of efforts and ideas that I had. I'd done some network marketing a little bit,
Okay.
dabbled in that, and had made some money doing that. But
Yeah.
again, realized in the end it's probably not going to really be that good.
Hmm.
I did actually, for 20 years during that time, I was actually in business with my best friend Bob Chamberlain again, and my
Gotcha.
uncle.
It's a carryover
Yeah,
partner.
yeah. My uncle, gentleman named Norman Schultz, Uncle Norm Schultz. That's what I have to call him.
Uncle
Still do.
Norm.
And he's passed away since then. But we ran a driving range in a little
Golf
village called
driving.
New Bremen, New York. And we did that for 20 years.
Okay. Did
So
you like
that's where I
own and
learned.
operate a property?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, actually, it's my Uncle Norm's property, and we the company the Crystal Acres Driving Range LLC
Is it still
ran
in
it.
business?
No, it's actually been completely cleared, and he sold it, and now there's a house built on it.
Okay. So you had a business that you were one of a trio,
Yes,
and then that business either it
right. He ended up when they went to a retirement home. He
gotcha.
sold the
He sold the
property.
property and the business went
Yeah.
away at the same
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 30 years corporate, 20 years at the same time
Yeah.
in private business with friend and family.
Yes.
And then this inspiration comes upon request. And now since then you've been in business what is my math? 16 years, 15, 16
16 years.
years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a career, my friend.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's been a journey, but again, I've always trusted and have faith that the Lord, if He provides an idea, He's going to help you with it,
Yeah.
stay with you, and He certainly has. The driving range was fun because my uncle just a really neat man. He had a good business mind. So Bob Chandler and I both learned a lot from him.
Gotcha. You had that mentor character in your life to share,
Correct.
like, do this in business, do that in business. And okay.
Plus, stepping over to Grand Slam Safety, then Bob Chamberlain had run his own Chamberlain Home and Renewal business for many years. In fact, when I moved from my from Lexington, Kentucky, back home,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I worked with him on doing roofing and siding for about a year and a half before I
Okay.
found my work in the nonprofit world.
Gotcha.
So that's what got me back.
Okay.
And then, so Bob I brought him especially because he had that business acumen.
Mm-hmm.
His friend Mick Lehman, who also knew as well, but then we brought Mick in as the third member. Mick an engineer
Mm-hmm.
and had ownership in Bernier and Carr firm in Watertown.
Okay.
And so he had business. The fourth partner, Dave Moore, he is an electrician and had his own business,
So you
electrical
really
contracting. So
surrounded yourself with the
I
right
brought in guys
minds.
who knew business
Yeah.
because I didn't.
Right.
So I came from the nonprofit world and stepped into the profit world.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say this, I joked about this for many years until it wasn't so funny anymore. But I told people that I used to work in the nonprofit world. I've been doing Grand Slam safety for X number of years, and I'm still in the nonprofit world. It's not easy to make money in a business and make a profit when you start it.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
It's just so I would joke with people saying, "Yeah, and I'm still in the nonprofit world."
It just took us 8 years or whatever
yeah.
it is.
But no, yes, I didn't have business experience directly other than the Crystal Lakers driving range.
But you knew who to ask and surround
Right.
yourself with. And honestly, as I've had these conversations more and more, it's like the solopreneur is the one who struggles the most.
Correct.
And the person who is like, no, I'm just going to develop it all myself. I'm not going to ask the questions. And this thing, I need help. The admission of I need help to do this
Right.
well and not to take 30 years to get to square one. And that's really cool to see very practically in your story of like, hey, no, I have this connection already. There's trust in this relationship because developing a partnership in business is scary. And saying like, hey, we're going to share ideas and profits and risk and do this together. Like that's terrifying in the modern world where there's backstabbing and lack of trust and all those other things. But you've done it with people that you've had exposure with and who you've had experience with.
Yes.
And worked for and worked with and collaborated. I'm sure you
Yep.
had people over to your house and you just knew individuals. And so like, no, let's do this together and not just try and run with it yourself and figure it all out. Like that's really cool.
Yeah, that's which is so true because the idea that a person who, let's say an electrician, and you're an electrician and you work independently, and that'll work. That'll work.
Yeah.
The problem is that to go beyond just the electrician's responsibility and to go and to expand what else you're going to do, especially when you get into actually large projects and additional design and all that, that's really something where there's a danger a person thinks they can do that just one person. That gets to be a bit problematic and more risky. So my perspective is I had to bring in people who could understand a lot more about the whole world of the a business, know how to run it, and all of that.
So Bob, you had this idea, and then it developed from there. But were you still working your compliance, working with nonprofits? Were you still working the two at the same time, or did you just say, nope, this is a good enough idea, hard stop? Now I'm going to go full. I'm an entrepreneur now, or was this like slow merging period? And if you could describe to me what that slow migration in from one industry to another industry, from one position to the next position, what was that like for you, and kind of how did that take place?
It was a slow transition.
Okay.
It wasn't a stop and start.
Yep.
The idea, of course, started early, and I've been working through that whole time period from 2008. So for many years, I was playing with the idea, working part-time in the evenings and weekends and Saturday to try to push things forward. But later on, when it got more serious, in 2000, I'm thinking it was 2014 or 15 when we really started making a more aggressive transition. I had been working full-time in the nonprofit world up until then.
Okay.
Starting
so for another 6 years.
Correct.
Wow.
So what happened was then we started the transition, and at the time, I was working for the agency I was working for was Credo Community Center for the Treatment of Addiction.
Okay.
And I had just taken that job and moved there, and again, as I said earlier, starting to incorporate different things that they wanted me to incorporate for the agency. But I came on board with that, telling the executive director, Jim Scordo, was a good Christian man. He was the best guy I ever worked with. I loved him. And I was honest with Jim. I said, Jim, I got something going here. So we kind of looked at a 4-year package
So you had a
that
very
that
clear
that I,
disclosure, like,
I was
I'm on my
confident,
way.
with the Lord's help, that I could get them up and going on this over a 4-year period,
Wow.
but that I worked full time for a year,
Okay.
30 hours the next year, roughly 20
Whoa,
hours the
you
next
created
year.
your own exit package.
Yeah, again, the Lord's been good. It's been very been a blessing. And so the last year I was there, I was only working about 10 hours a week,
Yeah, just making sure
and in the
everything's
process brought everything to a nice close, and then actually helped them develop their strategic plan to carry it forward. So I did work for the agency in regarding the planning process as well. Yeah, so it was gradual.
okay.
And so of course, if I worked when I worked, the hours are basically days.
Sure.
Call them days. So yeah, as I dropped one day at Credo, I one day at the at Grand Slam in the
Mm-hmm.
office.
There's something to like my exposure has now been um, different than YouTube or different than Instagram, where people are just like hard stop and then start something else. My exposure in these conversations has been more of migration change
Right,
more than full stop change.
right.
Even in my
Yeah.
last conversation, I had a interview with a loan officer for home mortgages, and he was a firefighter. And he worked for many, many years as a firefighter and then got certified in mortgages and then nights and weekends is working the double time to learn about this new industry and then over the course of years made that transition as well. And I think that's more of a reality of business and even entrepreneurship to where like you don't have to go full in day one. Be smart, be strategic, surround yourself by the right people, and then the transition will come. It just doesn't have to be instant gratification change.
In my case, the way I did it, I when I look back, I realized, it was sometimes I realized it was better than I realized at the time from the standpoint that I had made a commitment to Credo that I was going to help this transition over four
Yep.
years. At the same time, it was a very, it was the right thing for me to say to the company, I can't come full time on this day. I've made a commitment, and here's how it's going to work.
Mm.
So we planned on that. We built it into the plan. And in the
Right.
process, the company, Grand Slam, actually was assuming my salary gradually.
Got it. It wasn't a huge
And that
hit.
was acceptable. The reality is that, again, many other things you talk about of running a business is when you're a member of the company, you have to be careful about salary level
Hmm.
compared to just taking distribution.
Right.
The IRS doesn't like.
You can't take a $2 salary.
Correct. But in light of our company just growing and developing,
Hmm.
and quite frankly, I made a reference earlier about a nonprofit. I kind of joked about that. We did make we did make a profit at the
Hmm.
beginning. This entire company from day one has been funded by ourselves or by friends and family.
Yeah.
Literally, we didn't go to the bank.
Wow.
The Lord provide opportunity through friends and family.
Hmm.
And it's funny because one of our better supporters is right across the street from the factory right now.
Wow.
He supported the company before we ever built the factory.
That's incredible.
So, or we didn't build the factory. I'm sorry, but before we moved into the factory.
So, Bob, you instead of going to a traditional bank, instead of going to Chase or going to some big institution, you decided to fund your business, this idea, this something new, this birthing of something new through friends and family. And that could be tumultuous, that could be really good. It sounds like it went really well for you, but what was that like and what were you going for in regards to like were you going for $1 million? Were you going for $5 million? Like how did that all come together? And did that change your relationships with people or did it really like encourage or bolster them?
Good question. In the beginning, in the very early stages, when we built the prototype that I referred to earlier,
Yeah.
it was the four primary members, the initial members.
Mm-hmm.
It was our out of pocket. We put the money together, start building it and putting it together,
Yeah.
and pay for the patent and apply for the organizational status.
Mm-hmm.
But as we went along, we started looking at expanding. Again, think I said earlier, we really are really in a business development in the first 5 years.
Yeah.
But we got to a point where We, especially when we bought the facility in 2014,
Mm-hmm.
bought the paper plant. That's when we realized, okay, we probably need to look at this in a little bit different way
Hmm.
because of the cost of the property. So
Time to
we
bring in the funding.
started. We made the decision that we were going to, rather than a bank, that we were going to literally try to see what interest there was right in the community.
Okay.
And so we ended up being able to just touch base with a few friends. By that time, the community had already seen the actual prototype of the fence at Beaver
Right.
River.
Because it's already there.
It's already there.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we'd already had our first installation at at another local high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so the community had already become aware of it. So one of the things that we'd already let people know that our intent was in buying the plant in Krogan, New York, was that we wanted to keep this business local, and we wanted to always to be local.
Right. We're not outsourcing to another
Right.
state for cheaper taxes no, we're keeping it here in our community. Interesting. Okay.
And in that regard, we started talking to literally family and friends. And we approached people about simply investing. We
Mm.
knew what the simply the insurance cost of going to a bank.
Right.
So we had offered slightly less. We offered to pay a little bit less interest,
Yeah.
yet not not too minimal of an interest.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to find several people in the beginning who were willing to lend us literally thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
because they had seen the product. They had gotten excited about it. They saw the plant opened up again. This abandoned paper plant mill was open again.
Right.
Cars in the parking lot. And they started realizing what it might mean. And they had hope for us. And they were friends with people we grew up with,
Right.
people we went to school with. So that's kind of, that's kind of where it started. And it continued to grow from there as we bought the plant.
Mm-hmm.
And as we expanded and need more capital to grow,
Yep.
we ended up talking to more family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, over time, we were able to slowly, as we continued to grow as a company, get the cash we needed to operate.
Yep.
We did simple paper promissory notes
Okay.
indicating what we planned to do and pay people back.
Yep.
They trusted us, and we had them notarized, and we did all the right things. And just that way, it's very simple.
Sure.
Didn't have a lawyer. Didn't need a
Hey,
lawyer
you
at
have a
that
notary.
point. We had a notary. So it worked really well. And it worked very well up until probably just maybe 4 or 5 years ago even,
Okay.
when in fact we had to really push the limit as far as the actual, really having an operating line of credit, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I said 4 or 5 years ago. Probably it's around 2017 and 18 is
Mhm.
when it got to that level. In fact, in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't mentioned this before, we actually then we had 4 other people that are very interested in more than just loaning. They want to become members of the business, and we took advantage of that by selling
Gotcha.
off part of the business to
So you did
create more
shares.
capital for the business.
Okay.
So each of the initial members, we had 25%.
Yep.
We sold off 20% of the company.
Okay.
We became 20% owners. One gentleman bought 10%. One gentleman bought 5%, and 2 people bought each 2.5%.
Wow.
So we had what we called Class A members, the
Yep,
original,
some
and then
real
Class B
equity
members that were.
investors.
So they put in hundreds of thousands of dollars into the business.
Yep.
Became members, and that stimulated continued growth.
Mhm.
Probably for, I'd say, 2018, 19 into 20. Then COVID hit.
Yeah. How did COVID affect your business? Being it's both indoors and outdoors, but it's communal and like, how did that affect you?
Well, the most immediate effect of COVID on us was that and this is a New York-based company, and the governor of New York at the time, Cuomo, literally shut us down. He shut every
Oh,
business down
right.
unless you were considered essential,
Yep.
which was common
Mhm.
back in 2020 because again, everyone was doing the best to prevent the continued spread of the virus. So
Sure.
we understood that, and fortunately, what the state did, what the feds did, even though again it created significant cash cash needs for the federal government, and
Mhm.
obviously, much higher. It increased our debt. We know that,
Yeah.
and that was the paycheck protection program
Yep.
and the economic disaster loan program.
Mhm.
And we were able to take advantage of that. In fact, quite frankly, if it wasn't for those programs, we'd be out of business today.
Sure.
In fact, a lot of businesses would make it anyway.
Oh gosh, so
But
many.
that did help us.
Yep.
So that was a struggling time, but we made it through again and again. The Lord provided a way, and we continued to grow.
Mhm.
And then eventually we got through COVID, and ever since COVID, we've had a significant growth curve ever since.
Come on.
And it's been, in fact, can still remember because I'm the one that worked on and submitted the applications for the payroll protective
The
program,
grants. Yeah.
protection program, and the EIDL loan. And at that time, we had 10.4 FTEs,
Okay.
and now we have 34. So that's just since 2020. So again, we've grown well. Lord's blessed us, and it's been the whole funding thing has been just one step at a time. What's the next need? What's the next level?
Mhm.
How much capital do we need to get there?
Mhm.
And it's been again, it comes down to planning and projecting,
Yep.
and it's an art, not a science,
Yeah.
because you never know until
It's
you
not
get the
just metrics; it's
opportunities.
feeling too.
Right. Yeah.
So when you moved into the plant in 2014, how many employees were you at?
That's when we hired our first
So
employees.
that you went from like garage and then that barn facility to paper plant, and that's when you hired your first official
Yeah,
employee.
we hired
Whoa,
three
I
people.
expected you to already have like 10 or 15
Oh
people working
no,
on this.
we had there was just the members and myself,
Oh, wow.
and that was it.
So you
Yeah,
guys were not only running the business and creating the product, but delivering the product,
and
installing the
installing it.
product
Yeah,
while you were having a full-time job that is slowly waning off in those early
correct.
years. But like, oh my goodness, Bob, you were doing
Well,
everything with
yeah,
your founding members and the people on board. But so you went from basically 1,000 miles per hour, full speed ahead to, okay, now I have to be not just an entrepreneur, but I have to be a business owner
hmm
and hire people.
yeah.
Like, what was that experience to like having to like actually give over authority and stamp of approval on people? Like that could be a make it or break it point for a business of like, I know quite a few people that stay a solopreneur or a very,
Right,
founding members type business
right.
because hiring people, especially in today's economy, can be horrible.
Yeah,
And like
yeah,
somehow you've come through all of that.
yeah. At least it appears that way. Um, no,
We're not going to name
well,
names.
it's kind of like any organization. Every organization does really well until you add that second person.
Right.
But that's just reality. That's just people are people, right? But the challenge came in 2014 when we opened the plant. We had already had people teed up and ready to come in.
Okay.
It's not like we hired them. We didn't think about it till we got there.
Right.
Once we were moving towards closure, we were already making decisions in regard to bringing people on. So we'd already identified several people.
Mm-hmm.
And one was, in fact, our lead engineer, who became one of the partners. One of the partners that
Oh,
came in
gotcha.
at 5%. And so we'd already started in that direction. So we were able to move into the factory,
Mm-hmm.
and get that thing up and operating just within a few months, and get started.
Wow. Do you know in that when you went from being small town shop to like you have a full operation going in this old paper mill, like how many products do you think that you sold in that 2014 year? Were you doing hundreds of installations and units, dozens? Were you doing just a few? Like what was that first year being kind of like the foundation of where you
hmm
are today because you're in that same facility? Like what does that contrast from where you were then to where you
Yeah.
are now?
I have a workbook that can document that,
Yeah.
and so I could show you that at some point. My recollection in 2014 is we're probably at about 7 to 10, no, maybe 6 to 8 actual projects that we would have been working on at that
Okay.
point.
So like one every 6 weeks or so. I mean, there's overlap
Yeah,
and
and
spin
again,
up time and all that stuff.
primarily it was we were still just in the fencing the fencing aspect of the business, the either outfield fencing or an indoor fencing around the turf field,
Mm-hmm.
and starting to get into basically some netted curtains and some netted batting cages. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty basic at that point. So I would say between 6 and 8 projects that.
Wow. Okay. And then has it compounded since then, or has it been linear, or how
Yeah,
has that
no,
growth been?
we're this year we'll probably, I think in the last couple of years we probably have been right around 100 to 120 a year.
Okay. That's a little more than linear.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, again, if you looked at the numbers since 2020, even it's been significant. And the one thing I've always been, pride myself in is trying to keep track of our growth and stuff. So I have charts and graphs and all kind of
Oh my
stuff I can
gosh.
share off
A little
from all
before
the
the show,
years.
he showed me some of the history books, and he's got files and almost like a journal of every major event that happened. And like that, just part of this conversation, I'm going to take that and start writing a few more things down
Hmm.
because I write a lot of things down anyway. But like to have the chronology
Yeah,
of your business, that is something special. I make up the story that if things are not going well or there's a hard time or something like that, like no, 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 I have something to go back to say no. We have a proven product, we have a proven business. Don't lose hope. Keep your eyes on where we're headed. Like
right,
this is the proof. I don't have to think about it or
right.
self-prove. I have it from past me saying that no, we're good to go forward.
Yeah, and that's one thing about having a business and a startup that's become evident to us in the last few years, and just even recently we've had we've had a prospective client basically come back to us and say, well, obviously there's always references.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked at another thing online today for this company that's sending us a bid, asking us to bid on a project for them with them or for them, and they wanted to know basically the three biggest jobs you've had in the last 2 years or whatever, and a reference from them.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing is critical.
Yeah.
People are always looking for verification of are you who you say you are,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important. That's all part of doing it and doing things in a way that's credible and honorable.
We're
I mean,
never going to get away from the relationship
no,
side of
correct.
business. That's really, I mean, it's not what you know, who you know. I mean, it's cliche, but it's also like, it's not even good for, it's not just good for networking. It's that, like you said, the verification process and that can this person actually come through on what they say? And it's
Yeah,
not smoke and mirrors. It's like real.
yeah. In fact, one of the key parts of our strategic plan as we move forward is recognizing in our industry how important it is that you develop relationships. And yes, this is the modern age where everything could be texting or Facebooking or all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is our best relationships that we're finding we build by in-person communication,
Yeah.
contact, fly to see them, go out to see them, drive to see them, invite them to our factory, spend the
Mm-hmm.
day with us on our factory, talking, looking at the people, meeting the people that make the products. Um, that we're finding is incredibly important because part of our strategic plan, we're being very intentional about building relationships
Mm.
and developing relationships with other businesses,
Yeah.
with our competitors even, and even understanding what our limitations are versus our competitors,
Mm.
and talking about how we can match up in certain projects. We've actually done projects with other vendors like us, but
Interesting.
facilitated doing projects. We work very close with a company called Keeper Goals,
Okay.
and John Moynihan's just an outstanding guy. I just love the guy, and we work together on a lot of projects. He has certain products. We have certain products. We work together and put in joint
Mm.
applications, and it can go either way. So it's incredibly important, especially in the niche field that
Mm-hmm.
we're in when it
Yep.
comes to athletic facilities and projects.
Let's abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset of like, no, no, we can make this pie bigger for the both of us. Like we
Right.
can have a great relationship and not just,
Yeah.
down you, up me. Like that's a poverty mindset almost is
Hmm.
like someone has to lose in order for someone to
Yeah.
win. That's unfortunate. But what is it you have now gone from being at the factory, I assume pretty much every single day, to now you are thousands of miles away. still being very much a part of this business and the day-to-day stuff and probably the sales and visiting and meeting with clients and making sure that this thing continues to grow, and
Mhm.
how has your role changed from being in person to more remote? How has that transition been, or what is that transition?
Yeah, when you ask me that question, I think that for me, my role as far as what I do for the company
Mm-hmm.
hasn't really changed.
Cool. Okay.
And again, primarily because, modern technology has his shortfalls at times, but it's also evident that it's very beneficial.
Hey, a video meeting
Um,
is still a video meeting.
when you realize that you have more computer technology in your pocket these days versus what they had in a whole room putting a man on the moon, it's
Yeah.
pretty impressive. But yeah, there's nothing that I still have on my to-do list each day as far as president of the company and
Mm-hmm.
supporting sales and financial management and all that kind of stuff. I can do it all remote.
So you were just able, as the company grew, work yourself in a position to where
Correct.
you didn't have to be eyes on site every single time.
Correct.
You didn't have to. So you created those trust relationships in process and not just got to the end and be like, oh no, I need to make
Right.
this adjustment, and then having to like completely start from scratch.
Right. Right. No, as we grew,
Mm-hmm.
I had to wear fewer hats.
Yeah.
And even if I had to keep the same hat, it became much smaller.
Great
So as we
intentionality.
grew and we were able to hire people, obviously our production grew with needing more people. Our engineering needed more engineers. Our installation crews needed to grow and do
Mm-hmm.
more. But along with growth of that, then becomes the growth and the need for financial management and hiring somebody who knows the books, who run the books, and someone who understood how the laws of hiring people and bringing people on board. So in that regard, it certainly was kind of just it happens, and you
Right.
continue to add people. And so when we hired the finance person, that was less for us to have to be so concerned about. I provide oversight there. I did that for years.
Okay.
Him and HR again. We stopped having to. Bob and I had to stop hiring people ourselves because Heidi was hired and she
Yep.
could do it. And so yeah, it just you do those things because you need to, and,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a natural sequence that's going to flow as you grow your organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then here, just more recently, in the last couple of years, we were able to get to a point where we could afford and was able to hire a general manager,
Oh
which
wow.
then allowed both Bob and I to start to offload a lot of the stuff that we were doing
Yeah.
so that we became more guidance and oversight. And we
Mm-hmm.
both maintain a pretty strong relationship in sales
Mm-hmm.
just because we're there. We know our product, we know our systems, we know the context. So
Yeah.
that's pretty natural. Now my role is primarily just board and the board of directors and the shareholders board participation, oversight, and guidance. And I do a lot of the sales.
Mm-hmm.
I have a heavy involvement in sales and our sales platform and
Yep.
managing that and finding leads and training people, providing support on quoting and all that kind of stuff, helping a lot of the young guys, read drawing, specifications and drawings for projects
Yep.
because,
Yep.
we get projects that the specifications may be 1,000 pages long, and
Golly.
we're only a particular part of that. But you got to learn. You got to know where to look.
Yep. You
You
gotta
got into the
read the
building. You get into
blueprint.
the
Where are things
drawings. You
coming
got to
from?
know what
Yeah.
to look for. So there's a lot of that I do. That's why I'm still putting in a little bit of time into this thing.
He says a little bit, folks, but it sounds a whole lot more
And,
than a
and
little
this
bit.
is my retirement, by the way. That's what I tell people. This is my
Are you
retirement.
retired?
Yeah, I'm retired from the nonprofit world. Yes.
Well, there we go. Okay. Do you plan on retiring?
People have asked me that. I went to my 50th reunion recently, and so many of the people are retired, and I think, why would I ever want to do that? But
Hmm.
no, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to back out at some point just for
Sure.
just to be kind to the company. They don't need me to, hang on until I can't talk anymore. But the reality is that I'd like to maintain a capacity for a while, for at least part time as we move forward.
If you love what you do, why change it?
correct. To me, this hasn't been work as much as been just it's been an experience. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
journey. It really has. And there's been some really tough times, brutal times. I mean, when you don't know if you're going to have the money in the bank to make payroll next week.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that that's really helped them understand that you have to also just trust in the Lord.
Yeah. My last question before we get right into that close there is, what has been an unexpected pitfall or hard time? And I say unexpected because there's just the general cycles of hard times and stuff like that, but that you just did not think you would encounter in your business. Was there something that you encountered was like, we never expected that we would be investigated by the feds. We never
Hmm.
that audits would be so hard. We never expected that, patents would be the most excruciating process ever. Like, was there something that you did not expect to encounter that just you had to face as a company?
Yeah, there's different things. I think in the beginning, I didn't, once we filed a patent application, I really didn't think it would be that difficult to get
Mm-hmm.
it through because I knew it was patentable. I knew it met the different standards and levels of something that would be patentable. So that was kind of unexpected. The rest of it, the financing, all that, nothing surprised us there.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I think overall that is somewhat disappointing is in the end, the the circumstances where you have to hire people and you're always trying to do your best hiring people,
Mm.
and it's I guess it's like any organization. Sometimes the most disappointing things can actually be people,
Yeah.
and that's just being honest about it.
It doesn't work
You,
out sometimes.
no, it doesn't. Our more recently, what's disappointing to me is a situation regarding a person who's basically, just trying to simply get workers' comp for the rest of his lives.
Mm.
That kind of stuff. That's kind of an eye opener to me. Someone else who would have been in the business maybe wouldn't have been caught off guard by that.
Right.
But but it was for me.
Mm.
But that'd be my question. On the other side,
Mm-hmm.
the next question I would answer before you ask is that what positive things come out of this is the
Yeah.
community support we had was unbelievable. We did fund this company through community,
Well,
and the
the
community's
community funded the
response.
company, and you're employing the
Right.
community, and like this is an amazing cycle. I'm brainstorming in my own head right now. Is like, if the microcosm of communities can have a center point of business for employment and finance, and like they're investing in their own
Right.
jobs, like
Right.
that is brilliant.
Yeah. No, it really, again, a small community. Krogan's very small as far as actual people live in Krogan. It's like 400 or 500 maybe, but it's a small county, rural county. And so the area that I grew up in Beaver Falls, 2 miles away, but we all saw ourselves as the same town in a sense. We all
Mm.
played basketball together. I mean,
Right,
there's
right,
no two
right.
different towns. But the reality is that I can still remember, and it still happens occasionally, is that when we first opened that factory for the first year or two or three even, we would have people stop in the mill,
Hmm.
the factory, and say, "Hey, I used to work here in 1974, and I
Wow.
remember this and this and this is over here." And we would have, I can't, I'll bet you at least 2 dozen people over the years have done that and told me that they just really, really appreciate seeing that building open again
That's
and
so
cars in the
cool.
parking lot and notice that and appreciate that. In a
Mm-hmm.
small community, I could walk up the street of Kroger and whatever, and people would say, "Hey, Bob, how's it going anyway? How's business?" I mean,
They're rooting
they
for you.
really
Come
care.
on, Bob, you can do it.
Yeah, they really that's the thing that really was for me that I was very pleased with, and I can't say I'm surprised, but I was very glad to hear. I was surprised in a way, but
Mm.
very glad to hear. And I always said, and I still tell people today that the one thing that means a lot to me that I'll never necessarily know it's happened because I wouldn't be there, but somebody from Krogan, New York, or anywhere in upstate New York, Lewis County, New York, who knows Grand Slam, is go somewhere in the country. They
Mm-hmm.
walk into an athletic facility and see our logo, or they go to a ball game and see our outfield fence, and they go, "Hey, that's one of ours."
Yeah.
To me, that's what it would be all about because
Mm-hmm.
anybody in that community take ownership, and we know how that is.
The
Small
pride of
business,
that's our
the
thing.
pride of the local company. That to me would be that to me would be special.
And I'm just going to say on top of that, how many unknown things in regards to injuries that you've saved people from?
Mm.
Like, there's no way to quantify that one because there's no data that you can say, hey, we've helped, 3,800 shoulders from being injured. Like,
Right.
there's never going to be a data point for something like
Yeah.
that. But just you having this divine inspiration to make a change, who knows in 5, 10, 15, 20 years how much the entire industry can change
Yeah.
and how many more people will not encounter a hard stop
Correct.
injury,
Correct.
but be able to, float in and float out and be able to just go on to their
Yeah.
next thing in their daily lives.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good point. I think that my partial answer to that is that we can't track the number of people,
yeah.
but I have been tracking the number of use hours.
Okay.
So we know our facilities, we know what system is there, we know how many hours it's going to get used on an annual basis on average. Tracking the actual use hours
Mm-hmm.
and the amount of injuries.
Is there a data statistic about injury per use hour?
I could, but there's at this point there's been no reported injuries, so there's no data point. But I can tell you the number of use hours, and we're approaching probably 1.8 million use hours
Oh
right
my
now.
gosh.
So that's and I have a spreadsheet again. I could show you that. I mean, I have all kinds of stuff. If you want to spend a couple of weeks with me,
We just have computers and data and computers and data.
So no, that because I did that from a marketing standpoint. I wanted to be able to show that from a marketing standpoint, Grand Slam safety systems have had 1.x million use hours to date, and we've had no reported. And I'm saying no reported injuries. I can't say that there's no injuries,
Sure.
and I can't say, just like I can't say that our system will avoid injuries.
Yeah.
But it's the tension specto system, the patented system,
Mm-hmm.
is the safest system on the market. Period. There's none like it.
Come on.
And we still have 8.5 years on the patent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the safest system, but I can't guarantee that it's you're not going to sprain your ankle as you slide back off the fence on the back and walk back on the field.
Mm-hmm.
But you aren't going to be hitting chain link fence.
Come on.
And that's, when I say that thing about I can't guarantee, the one thing that I've said to people in regard to the whole original concept back in the beginning, the idea that the Lord gave me, and I tell the young people that come through the plant tours, the local schools come through the plant once a year to have the kids tour to see what what jobs are available in the community. And I would tell them, because they'd all start at my office, and because I'm the one with the nice bottle hung out the wall, and I would tell the kids, I'd say, if you think of something, don't just think about it, act on it. And because I tell them,
That's
I
wisdom right
can't
there.
say that I'm the only one ever to think of this. It's probably been thought of thousands of times. But I tell them that according to the United States Patent and Trademark website, I'm the only one that acted on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of something that's going to work, go for it.
Yeah.
You'll never know until you try.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of when I said that thing about, thinking about something and testing it out. That's what comes to mind.
That is incredible. Bob, where is Grand Slam safety gonna be in the next 3, 5, 8 years? Like, I kind of always like to close with we've talked about where you started, where you are, kind of what's been, but like, where are you going? As where can we see Grand Slam safety? Am I gonna see it in my local, professional sports team, or just like where are you going as a company, and what can we see coming forward?
That's a great question, and that probably could take us hours in another strategic planning session.
Gotcha.
But
If you could summarize.
Yeah, summarize it. Could describe it in different ways. One is growth. As a company, there always needs to be growth to some level.
Yep.
So the idea would be, some growth. We're trying to arrive at what level, because that's going to in fact then determine what has got to be part of that.
Right.
Expanding our product line is part of that. Developing relationships and partnerships with other businesses to work cooperatively together even if it's with a competitor. Also, to recognize that, in fact, the idea that as we've gotten national recognition,
Mm-hmm.
which has happened, we are looking at and are receiving acquisition offers,
Okay.
and that creates a whole different level of thinking
Sure.
and a way of strategizing.
Interesting. Yeah. If you think of the 5 and 10 year plan of like, hey, we have we have Reebok coming down here and saying we want to purchase and take it international. What
Correct.
does that mean for you as a complete, sellout or an equity position or a
Correct.
stakeholder? Like, oh my goodness,
Correct.
yeah.
So that's where we are as a business right now. The
Interesting.
reality is to get to the next level,
Uh-huh.
to be right now we're around a 7, next year probably around an $8 million company.
Uh-huh.
To go to that next level, we are really, as we're growing, again, in any growing company, cash is always the challenge.
Yes.
You cannot grow unless you have cash.
Mm-hmm.
And in growing, you consume cash.
A
So
lot.
cash is always a struggle when you're growing so fast. So we get to this point, we want to go to the next level, get to that $10 to $15 million level.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's a matter of cash.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, again, it becomes just like we did in 2017. We sold out part of the ownership.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you do it.
Yep.
Can we do it ourselves? We're also in the process, at the same time, we're transitioning ownership
Okay.
to a whole new generation of owners.
Yeah.
And my son Sam's one of them. How do we do that and make it affordable to them?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are right now. And where we're going to be in 5 years, I can't tell you.
Man, I hope I'm around in 5 years and I can come and ask you the same
Yeah.
question. Like, where are you at, Bob?
I know and the intent and hope would be exactly, I hear you. The hope and intent would be that the ownership is transitioned, the company has got the cash it needed and is stable.
Mm-hmm.
Growth is in 5 years, it probably should be at least into the 12 to $15 million range.
Yep.
And that we have, in fact, secured an additional relationship with another either partial owner or majority holder
Mm-hmm.
that actually is providing the capital to continue expanding and growing as a company under the same brand as Specto, our trademark, and
Yep.
the name Grand Slam Safety.
Yep.
But we may not be necessarily a little locally owned business in Krogan. Part of the company may in fact be owned by a much larger company and
Absolutely.
an investment group that supports them.
Absolutely.
That's the reality of business today.
And mysterious prospect. What is the next 5 years gonna hold for you guys?
Yeah, no, that's true.
Oh my gosh. Well, Bob, I cannot thank you enough for being a part of this show and having the conversation and from HR and making sure that systems are in compliance to having a divine idea to then building a little model to having a conversation with school boards to building one with friends and family to investing to buying a plant to like where you are today being a multi-million-dollar company. Like, you have had a journey, my friend.
Yeah.
And it is an incredible one to talk about. And like, I could, if it wasn't late and we had more time and like there were so many things I could more ask, but thank you for coming on the show and for sharing your story with me and the audience. And like, that is really special, Bob. Like that you've been able to create something. And I know, you and I have the perspective. It didn't come from you.
Right. That's correct. I didn't create anything.
But you said yes. And like
Right.
you tell all those students, you acted on it.
Yeah.
And that has produced something so special, not only for you, but for your community. And how many lives have it changed beyond that? And like, wow, congratulations on saying yes to that whisper, that voice, like that you said yes to that and it's created what it has created.
Yeah.
Like that is a truly cool thing. Yeah, I'm in awe. Like,
Well,
this is
appreciate
great.
it. Well, I appreciate that. When you said that, though, Jonathan, the one thing that I reminded me of is when Bob Chairman and I first started the business together. We were primarily the two people that worked in it the hardest in the beginning.
Yep.
Way back in the early days, this would have been probably 2011 and 12,
Okay.
13, 14, up through there. I had a relative of mine. His name is Bob, and he
There's
ran.
lots of Bobs
Yeah,
in
he
New
did.
York.
Yeah, we sit at breakfast at the restaurant we met at, and we'd be the three Bobs, literally. So Bob was he was a president and CEO of a company called Slack Chemical in Carthage, New York. And Bob, the young Bob and I would go see him and use him as a mentor and how to help us with this business.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget at one point, it was just the Bob Sturts and myself, not Bob Chamberlain. He wasn't there at the time, but he said to me, he said, Bob, I really admire you.
Hmm.
And I go, Bob, why would you say that to me? I said, you got a really well-known Slack Chemical. You're known all over the East Coast as far as they produce chemicals in stuff that's used in different types of water filtration systems and in refuse reclamation programs,
Yeah.
whatever. Very well known. And he said, he said, yes. He goes, we have X number of employees today, and we are $20 million a year. He said, but I started with 3 employees and $2 million a year. I just grew the company.
Hmm.
And he looks at me and then he said, you started with an idea.
Yeah.
And I've never forgotten that, because that's where his perspective was different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
He thought it was so neat that I started with an idea. And again, I've said this before, the Lord provided the idea.
Amen.
And I just had to act on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. It has been an exciting thing. I've been so focused on continuing to live this dream in this American dream, right?
Sure. Yeah.
That I've not thought so much. I don't think about that very often. I just keep pushing forward. But when I do stop and think, and I think back of being in my basement, sewing together those little panels that were going to go on that first wiffle ball fence. We have to do a wiffle ball fence. That's another story. To what we've done today.
Yeah.
And even to the point where in 2016, a moment that comes to mind, and I know this is a bit fragmented in our discussion,
I'm loving it.
as these things come to mind. So Bob Chamberlain and I, in 2016, we got a project for an outfield fence for the city of Seoul, Bakdori Park, in the outskirts of Seoul, South Korea.
Well,
So
that's a project.
yeah, so Bob Chamberlain and I felt really guilty about having to send any of our employees all the way to Seoul, South Korea.
Okay.
We felt that was just too terrible for them to have to do. So Bob and I said, we'll do it.
Of course.
So yeah, this was back in probably 2016. So yeah, we'd had the factory at that time and had people employed. So yeah, so Bob Chamberlain and I go to Seoul, South Korea. We landed in Japan, had some business meetings with some companies there. One was actually Mizuno. And then from there, we went over to Seoul, South Korea, and met with our salesperson there, who's a guy named Jake Kim, really nice guy, Christian actually took us to his church.
Oh, that's awesome.
So in the process, Bob and I, the day of the installation, were up in the field, nice little dirt field up on some mountainside outside Seoul. And in the process, we were trying to help them set the fence up for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just trying to get these two things to clip together. And so we're both down there in the dirt, the hot. It's 90 degrees out, hot, dirty. Of course, here we are, men in our 60s. And we're just all of a sudden, Bob, the way we grew up together, he just starts laughing. And all of a sudden, I realized what he's laughing about, so I start laughing. And all of a sudden, we realize, here we are, two guys that are 60s, trying to get this thing clipped. We're on the opposite side of the world from home, dirty, hot, in a place trying to teach people how to put up a fence. I can't speak Korean, so I'm doing all the training by sign language. I'm making all these motions. And we realized, and Bob looks at me and goes, "What are we thinking?
This is ridiculous."
So that's, the thing about business is, you're going to come up with times like that where at the same time it's tough, but at the same time there's going to be those moments you'll never forget. And that was one of those
marvelous.
Times. It's just precious. I mean, here we are on the other side of the world,
Yep.
putting in this silly fence, this silly idea. Who'd ever thought? I mean, from Krogan, New York, a little fence manufactured in Krogan, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Really, yeah. Anyway, it's been a blessing.
That's a beautiful story. You're just in the middle of the field, just like, what are we doing? Who let us do this?
Well, there's another one too, but we can talk about that some other time.
Gosh. Well, Bob, if people want to work with Grand Slam Safety or they want to get their hands on the Specto system, where can they find you and how do we link you with members of our audience?
Well, I would say the best way is go to Grand Slam Safety. It's just www.grandslamsafety.com.
Okay.
That's all it is.
That is the home
Grandslamsafety.com.
space for the business. Go and find them, people. Connect with Bob and his team. What an incredible company. What an incredible origin story. And a really divinely innovative product.
Yeah.
Like,
for
thank
sure.
you so much for being on the show, for having the conversation. Blessings to you and your business as you guys tread forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it, John.